It seems likely, in my opinion, that the Kushites were probably winning.
Absolute, complete, total, utter nonsense. I don't know what they're trying to push here, but I'm going to bring in now all of the historical receipts. History hit. See if they have something new. History hit has got something from one day ago. Very rare ancient artifact. Ancient artifact reveal long lost kingdom. Oh wow. Is this gonna make Hancock happy? Romanov last days. The bloody end of Imperial Russia. I don't know why that to me sounds like they're swearing. You bloody end. What's up with the bloody end, mate? Am I gonna get demonetized if I say that? Hello, where are you? England. It's wet.
The team at the British Museum have invited me here to have a look at some extraordinary ancient artifacts up close. Special access. Naturally, straight away, I said yes. But there is a catch. I've no idea what these objects are.
There is a catch. I thought you were going to say, I'm going to have a curse bestowed upon me and my generation for 100 years to come.
know is that they're to do with ancient Sudan. So let's go and have a look.
Ancient Sudan. Wow. Ancient Sudan.
The artefacts will be part of an exhibition touring the UK called Ancient Sudan Enduring Heritage. Curator Dr. Loretta Kilroe has agreed to show me them in their study room. But en route, walking through the galleries, there's another artefact that Loretta says we must see.
This is the first object that we're going to have a look at.
Ah, okay, I recognise.
Sudan and Nubia. Oh yes, I know what that is. Head of... you know, for a moment when they were saying like Sudan, I was like, I don't know if I can say much, but there you go. Romans, glory to Rome, that is head of Augustus, the one in connection with the Kandake, Amanirenas.
This one. So it is Roman. We should mention that straight away, shouldn't we?
Yep. Bronze.
This piece has such a wonderful story to tell about Sudan, and I think people sometimes miss that. So this is a very classic Roman statue of the Emperor Augustus.
And how can you tell it's Augustus? Is it the
Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus Augustus? Apart from the fact that it's in his likeness, and now he's asking, of course. The haircut, typical of him. Ears, a little bit as well. But yeah, it's him.
The eyes? Is it the whole facial expression?
When the head was originally found, it was identified as classically Hellenistic. The bronze material, which would have originally been covered by plaster, is quite typical of the time period. The slight turn of the head and the hair, they are very similar to contemporaneous stone statues that we have of Augustus. So it was narrowed down to likely being him.
So originally this would have had plaster on top of the bronze, so different to how it looks.
Yes, there's a few traces still on the forehead. Whereas the eyes, which are very unusual to survive, they're made of calcite and glass.
The eyes are beautiful.
That is incredible. The eyes have glass in them. Did you see that? Yeah, glory to Pompey.
Beautiful, aren't they? I see very few statues that still have the eyes intact within them.
It's beautiful.
I want to say most, probably all statues in period would have had eyes either added like this would have made it particularly expensive, or simply painted on. When it comes to painting, usually in connection with marble, of course. But it's, because they were very lifelike, the statues in the Roman period, and in full color, of course.
Preserved. We have almost nothing else that is as well preserved. And the reason it's so preserved is because it wasn't found in Egypt or anywhere else in the Roman Empire. It was found buried underneath the entrance to a temple.
Temple, yes, boom, I knew it. Yep, that's the one found on temple E292. This is a story that I have dedicated 2 videos on, so I do actually have something of interest that I can add to this. When the 2 sides would be the Roman Empire, of course, and the Kandake. The Kandake are a type of warrior queens that are real, like actual black African warrior queens. You know how I was complaining so much that they took Cleopatra, whom we know was Greek, and they turned her black, and I was like, no, why didn't they use the Kandake? This is it. This is it, and you'll see why.
In Meroe, about 200 kilometers north of Khartoum in modern Sudan.
Yeah,
Meroe was the capital of the ancient Kingdom of Kush,
Yeah.
Its people were known as the Kushites. Today, Meroe is famous for its pyramidal structures that protrude from the desert sands. During Augustus's reign, the Romans incorporated Egypt into their empire. Roman control stretched as far south as Philae and the Nile's first cataract. But this expansion also put them into direct contact and conflict with the powerful Kingdom of Kush.
I wonder how I pronounce it that way. Conflict. I would say conflict. But I don't know. I'm not the native here. Kandake is a title, yes, not a name. In fact, they misunderstood that in period. They thought it was a name. It's not. It's a title. Basically, it's a queen. It's like a regent queen, sort of. Yeah, so this is like, of course, the Romans controlling and expanding. You got the sizes and specific geographical locations when compared to modern maps of Roman provinces vary with time. I might make a dedicated video to that, in fact. Take a shot every time I say that.
With the powerful Kingdom of Kush.
Not as powerful as the Roman Empire, but still.
Does this head end up in Sudan?
So you know how they said it was buried under a temple? There is a reason as to why they did that, because the Romans got pissed when the Kushites took this head. I really want to see if they give it justice, because this story is a fantastic story. But you have got to tell it right, and I'm here for it to double check it, because we researched this one deeply. So I will catch any mistake or any misspelling on purpose.
Not entirely sure. The head was discovered in 1910 by an archaeologist called John Garstang, and it was a complete surprise. And everyone was amazed by the fact there was a Roman piece so far south in Sudan. We know that there was a war in Egypt.
It was loot.
And with the Kushites between 25 BC to 22 BC. The historian Strabo talks about this. What we think happened is that the Kushites swept into Egypt. We know from Strabo's story that they burned temples and they attacked the Romans and they decapitated statues. This piece has been very neatly decapitated.
Oh yeah, so that's it. The head has just been cut off.
Absolutely.
So this is an amazing artifact that might corroborate with an ancient literary source. So archaeology and literature going together to learn more about the story, the context behind this object.
Strabo talks about this war in a little bit more detail. He mentions a warrior queen, a one-eyed warrior queen he calls Kandake.
That's it.
We think that this queen may be identified with Queen Amanirenas, whose title as queen was Kandake. So we think the Romans are getting a little bit confused here. Amanirenas is particularly interesting because she is in the middle of a line of warrior queens, female regents, and that's what Kush, I think, is particularly interesting for this powerful role of women that we see across the kingdom. The story goes that she swept into Upper Egypt, was pushed back by the Romans as far as Napata, which was the earlier capital.
Yeah, at first she did manage to do some damage. I might give you some more details on the battles. She did manage to do some damage, but then the Romans went back because what happened is that Augustus, in response, activated a Roman prefect, leading 10,000 strong against the Kushites. I will go into the details, but I want to see if they say it first. Because, I mean, the Romans are the Romans, you know. A military machine is what it is.
The Kushite kingdom. But then the Kushites pushed them back again. And this is where the story gets a little bit hazy. Strabo says that the Romans were winning, but Amanirenas sends ambassadors to sue for peace. And Augustus agrees with no conditions on Kush, doesn't make them a province, doesn't make them give any tribute.
Yeah, there is a letter between Amanirenas and Augustus.
It seems likely, in my opinion, that the Kushites were probably winning. The Kushites were probably winning. The Kushites were probably winning.
Absolute, complete, total, utter nonsense. I don't know what they're trying to push here, but I'm going to bring in now all of the historical receipts. Alright, so let me give you a non-political, no agenda, just the truth take on what happened. And we'll begin from the context, as that is important historically. She did not give any. Remember that geographically we are in the southern borders of the Roman-Egyptian prefecture. In a time spectrum, this happened between the 1st century BC and the 1st century AD. Now, since she mentioned the historian Strabo, he did tell us that in 25 BC, by orders of Augustus, the prefecture of Egypt Aelius Gallus began a campaign against Arabia Felix. Now, the overall idea behind this campaign was to secure a trade route between Rome and India, which would ensure the acquisition of precious spices being brought directly to the heart of the empire. However, the campaign was a failure, and the reason why the campaign failed was due to the fact that there was an outbreak of an infectious disease or a pandemic that killed off quite a lot of legionaries. Now, these legionaries that were sent to Arabia Felix were taken from precisely the Roman province of Egypt. And because of the movement of all these troops that were lost, the province was not well garrisoned, and that's exactly the moment in which the Kushites mobilized their troops against the Roman-controlled territories. So this is not a situation of, oh, the so powerful Kingdom of Kush managed to destroy a well-garrisoned and properly defended Roman province. No, sir. Egypt was unguarded, and that's when both Cassius Dio and Strabo tell us that the Ethiopians launch an offensive with 30,000 strong, led by Amanirenas. What did Rome have? In that specific sector, the Romans had 3 cohorts, and they get massacred. 3 cohorts versus 30,000 strong. But let's go deeper. The Imperial Roman response sees the new prefect of Egyptian province, Publius Petronius, with a legion of 10,000 infantry and 800 cavalry moving south. Then they reach the city of Selkis in northern Nubia. Before engaging, they demand the Kushite queen, the Kandake, to give back the statue of the emperor. But she ignores them for 3 days. As their demand receives no answer, the Romans deploy for combat. The Kushite warriors led by the queen face the Romans, and they are defeated by the legion in an open, pitched battle, as it often happens when the Romans are faced when they do what they know how to do best, even when outnumbered.
The Kushites were probably winning.
However, Strabo gives us 2 specific reasons as to why the Kushite are defeated by the Romans in this massive battle. First, they tell us they were not well equipped, in the sense that the only defense that these warriors had was a tall cowhide shield and a disorganized array of swords, spears, and some axes. Second, they tell us that their captains weren't particularly professional. The town is therefore occupied by the Romans, and the nearby fortress of Primis is taken.
The Kushites were probably winning.
The Roman prefect Publius Petronius decides then to continue his march and go further into the Kingdom of Kush. He reaches the important city of Napata that he conquers, razes, and burns to the ground, taking the population as slaves to Egypt.
The Kushites were probably winning.
Strabo then tells us that after taking Napata, the prefect decides to stop. He returns to Alexandria and leaves a strong garrison in the nearby fort. They underestimated them once, they're not gonna do it again. The Romans learn from their mistakes. The Kandake Amanirenas, however, decides to begin immediately a counter-offensive and storms the fortress, facing once again the Roman, forcing the Roman prefect to go back to defend. It is at this time that something extremely curious from a historical point of view, in fact even mysterious, happens. This is the moment when the Kandake writes a letter directly to Emperor Augustus with certain demands in order to reach mutual peace, and the emperor grants the demand. After the well-documented results of the imperial counter-strike, the taking of the city, the massacring of the Kushites in battle, to interpret this request for peace and the granting of peace as, no, I think the Kushites were winning, is ludicrous. Not to mention, it is not a strange thing. This happens a lot in Roman history. Imagine, for example, what happened with the Scots and how the Romans decided, you know what, just build a wall so we don't have to deal with them. Why didn't the Romans continue and use all of their might in order to conquer Caledonia, so Scotland all the way up to the Northern Isles? And the reason is always the same. Rome needs to justify economically the investment of resources when it comes to manpower, troops, legions, logistics, the economic strain. All of this has a cost. War has a cost. And unless the benefits and unless the economic benefits that would result in the conquering of certain territories outweigh the costs of waging war against that said territory, then the Romans usually prefer to choose peace. And this is clearly the situation here. Also considering all of the other wars and all of the other things that the Roman emperor was dealing with at the time, it was not worth it. That is the real context of what happened historically.
The Kushites were probably winning. The Kushites were probably winning.
Also, while we are at it, let me give you more context into the actual political position of the Kandake within the court of Meroe, because this is another thing that she just mentioned. Very, very powerful women, great, but you need to give the context, so here we are. It's a composite term in the Meroitic language, deriving from the word kanda, which means woman, and the particle ke, which could translate as possessor or owner. This is usually a title that is given to the sister of the king. Now here's the thing, when the king dies and there is only the sister, because the society of the Kingdom of Kush was matrilinear, which means that she would be the mother of the prince, she would be in charge. She would be treated like the king, at least until her son would come of age. Also, some Kandake and Meroitic inscriptions hold the title of Kore, which means king or sovereign, which further demonstrate that when their brother or king would die, they would become the de facto reigning ruler.
It's amazing to think that this decapitated bronze statue head may have been a trophy, captured by Amanirenas and her soldiers whilst raiding Roman Egypt.
It's not just a trophy. I do think that this was a propaganda piece. So imagine that, like, leaders did this all the time in classical antiquity particularly, but they also kept doing it in medieval period. But in classical antiquity, you take something from your enemy that represents them, and then where does she bury it? Underneath the temple, specifically underneath the staircase that led into the temple. What that means is that every single day people will be walking on top of the head of the Roman emperor, as to, I imagine, remind themselves that look what we did, we got this from the Romans, because they knew that the Romans were formidable. It's a propaganda
its detail
piece.
And accompanying story makes this one of the most extraordinary artifacts at the British Museum.
Right.
Well, this is an amazing start. What an object to see right up close. It is absolutely stunning. Now, I know I'm here to talk about ancient Sudan and look at this exhibition, these objects. I don't know what they are yet, but I'm guessing I'm about to find out.
Absolutely.
What have we got here? This is quite the piece we have in front of us.
So this is an offering table that would have been placed outside of a tomb of an elite, probably man, sometimes woman, and used by relatives to bestow nourishment on the deceased after death. What we call it is pouring libations. So they would pour a liquid in here, so it could be beer, wine, water, or milk. This would then overflow, go into this channel around the side, and then run down the spout. And this would symbolically nourish the deceased.
Beer, wine, water, or milk. I mean, I probably prefer beer of all of those ones.
I'll have beer as well, although then again, depending on what I'm having for dinner, if I'm having a nice steak, I wouldn't mind a little red wine.
Interesting selection of different liquids that the deceased could have be offered to them.
Yes, and then it would basically create all the food the deceased would need. So you can see on the offering table we have different types of bread.
Oh, that's bread, is it?
Yes.
Oh, you see this little kind of vertical lines. Interesting.
Yeah, it's the loaf and the lines that you would cut into bread before cooking it, baking it.
The pouring of libations would create these for the deceased. Just like in ancient Egypt, in elite Kushite beliefs, bread was considered quite important. It was less important for ordinary people, but makes a huge appearance in elite contexts.
That's fascinating. What an object.
This offering table dates to the 2nd century AD and is made from sandstone, a common material in ancient Sudan.
Yeah.
Almost 2,000 years old, it has survived incredibly well.
And Egypt, by the way.
This would have been placed outside of an elite burial, right in front of the tomb chapel entrance. You would bring your family on special festivals to remember your ancestors. You would go and you would pour your libations in front of the tomb chapel.
So this is like paying your respects to the dead, to an important family member, someone who's passed. This is you showing them that you're remembering them, almost like laying flowers on a grave today.
Absolutely. It was considered very important to remember your ancestors and where you're from, as it is in a lot of families today. And by doing this, you can honour them, but you also provide them.
And as it was for the Romans. I mean, they were obsessed with the cult, we could say, almost, of the ancestors. And if you were to enter a Roman home, a villa, but even like a smaller house, ancestors and representation of ancestors, even the faces of the ancestors would be everywhere.
With nourishment and sustenance in the afterlife. So you're almost keeping them alive.
You know, I love this idea of the concept, because when we imagine the afterlife, whether you be religious or not, usually you imagine it in a non-corporeal sense, spirit, the soul. If you go back really there is a component of physicality in life after death in ancient cultures. And if you think about it, like they are saying, nourishment, the dead need to eat, similarly to the living. And therefore, if you can, of course, it can be symbolic. But then again, if you think about it, even in the Gospels, what is the first thing that Jesus does after his resurrection? He eats. Maybe even drinks, if I remember correctly. So there is a connection to the concept. I think it's the concept of the resurrection of the body. Because if the body is resurrected, it's corporeal again, and there is a material aspect to it. It's a fascinating thing that we see commonly in a lot of ancient approaches to death. Ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, Akkadian scripts.
The details of this offering table are striking and reveal a close link to Egypt.
There you go. Man, I just...
So you can see on the left, this is a representation of Anubis.
Or the
Of course,
Egyptian
of
the god
course.
of the underworld.
Yes, so linked with the Egyptian god of the underworld, exactly. And the same on the right, we have the goddess Nephthys, who again is quite familiar from the Egyptian pantheon. You recognise the deities based on the headdresses in particular, Anubis's ears and the headdress on Nephthys.
The jackal of Anubis,
yes,
isn't it?
Exactly.
Yes.
But they don't look Egyptian. They are clearly hybridized with local belief systems. The reason that we are getting these Egyptianized elements on a Kushite object is because much earlier during the Egyptian New Kingdom, the Egyptians conquered Sudan and colonized it for about 500 years.
Yeah, 500 years is a long time to get cultural crossing. What do you use a word for it? Cross-cultural integration, cross-cultural exchange, perhaps.
And so over those 500 years, there was a lot of exchange of ideas, iconography, religious belief, and the Kushites took what they thought was interesting and relevant from Egyptian religion and reused it to express their own religious and cultural beliefs. So it's a hybridization. There's also elements of wider Mediterranean cultures in Kushite iconography as well, but it's always used to show a distinctly Kushite worldview.
And shall we focus also on this shallow bowl in the middle where the libations were poured? I noticed at the bottom though you also have that line, and that reminds me of those royal...
What a word, libation. Look, there's still pigment here, and that must be Egyptian blue. Very famous. Yeah, look at this. You can see the reds, the yellows, the greens. As usual, people loved multiple colors, polychromicity. Man, tonight I can't speak my words. Polychromatic effects. 500 years back then is even longer than 500 years today, considering life expectancies. So pristine. Yeah, the conditions are incredible. Yeah, sure, when you talk about average lifespan, but then again, average is what we're talking about. So you still had people that lived up into their 70s and 80s. It's just that there was a higher level of infant mortality in the classical period, which kind of skews the averages. It's not like people died at 30. That's not how that average works. It's like if you manage to survive your infancy, then it's quite likely that you get old.
Symbols in hieroglyphs, that is a cartouche.
Yes, exactly. So again, this is not from a royal burial. So this has been reused for elite belief systems. I think this is probably one of those Egyptianized elements.
So that frame which you have around it, artistically it's lovely because it keeps that image within, but it also has a practical purpose
exactly.
too.
The Kushite kind of iconography is very focused on that, very similar to how we would recognize Egyptian iconography to be. But again, we're seeing very different elements.
Surrounding this frame is one final piece of detail that gives this object a personal touch.
It always looks like, to my eyes, a pattern all the way around the far edges of this offering table. What is this pattern?
This is an inscription. This is in the indigenous language Meroitic.
Oh, this is writing. This
Yeah.
is Kushite writing.
So the offering table itself dates to around the 2nd century AD. Meroitic as a language
2nd century AD, I thought it was older than that.
comes in around 300 BC and lasts till around 400 AD. Meroitic could be written
Yeah, there you go.
written in Meroitic hieroglyphs, or it could be written in cursive. This is the cursive.
Cursive, yeah.
And this is a classic inscription accompanying the offering table. It tells us that it belongs to a person called Candace.
Oh, wow. Okay, good pronunciation there.
We're not sure if this is a man or a woman because there's no gender in Meroitic.
If we know a bit about what it says, has it been deciphered like with hieroglyphs?
So Meroitic is semi-deciphered. There are a lot of linguists who are still working on it, and we do discover new words every day. We don't have a Rosetta Stone of Meroitic, so it's been a lot.
Yeah, you wish, right? Man, the Rosetta Stone, what that discovery did when it comes to the interpretation of hieroglyphs is priceless. Priceless. Without that, we would still have no idea. Well, maybe a little bit. I mean, there are some hieroglyphs, like the one for water, I mean, whatever, but still, we would have no idea. All the names, all of the verbs, all the stuff that it... Yeah, hieroglyphic language is fantastic. The only thing that annoys me is that we don't know how it was vocalized, and so there is we use a lot of vowels of convention, but yeah.
Harder to identify what all the letters mean. But clearly this person had access to a lot of wealth and resources. This was placed outside a very fine tomb
Makes
in the
sense.
site of Pharas, which is a large necropolis that is now flooded under Lake Nasser, Lake Nubia.
Oh, wow. So to have this is pretty special because you can't now reach that site anymore.
Absolutely. So this is kind of all we have. The site was excavated in the early 1900s and never fully published. So the collection that we have from Pharas is really important for understanding it.
There's something when it comes to the semi-anthropomorphic looks of Egyptian deities, the way they're represented in iconography, archaeology, illuminations, that is just outwardly, isn't it? Almost scary.
I mean, it's such an extraordinary object, isn't it? Because it can talk to you more about, their ideas towards the dead, towards worship, their relationships with Egypt, but also, of course, with
differences in social classes and wealth distribution.
Language and culture. This gives you so many different ways to learn more about the Kushite kingdom.
Absolutely, and it was still in situ when it was excavated, so we know that it was exactly where people thousands of years ago would have gone up to it and poured their libations thinking of their ancestors.
How many artifacts have we got? Because as usual, when I do my reacts, I don't want to watch the whole thing because I want people to go to the original channel and actually, click the link in the description and the pinned comment to actually give them the views. So we're almost halfway through, and I will, in the final video after I finish, because it's kind of getting a little late, but I will add stuff because I thought they were going to speak more about the Kandake, the whole situation with Amanirenas. So I will add that in editing so that, you yourself have a reason to go watch the video once I publish it, since I'll add quite a lot more of information. If it wasn't this late, I would have done it live, but it is a little late. But let me see. So we've got a mask for artifact number 3. And then they have, there's a lot to say about it. And then a vase. And does it look like terracotta to use? That terracotta does have some painting on it. I love it when vases are in this condition. I mean, could you imagine? I'm probably going to, if you give me something like that, I'm going to crack it just by walking into my kitchen trying to get myself some pizza. It lasts 3 weeks. And this thing lasted, what? I'm kind of curious to know how old this thing is. But phenomenal. Look at the paintings. Man, this is going to be a good watch. Wow, look at this. Look at that frog. Well, let's see just the beginning so we know what this mask is about. This way we reach the middle of the video, and I think that's enough since I'm going to add some stuff on the Kandake Amanirenas and the interactions with the Romans.
Now, Loretta, this is the face of a goddess.
Exactly. This is
I thought it was a lot bigger. I thought it was like full size. It's a miniature.
Really special piece. We think this represents the goddess Isis.
Oh, Isis. Nice. Isis, it would be, in Italian we say Iside.
Originally came to Sudan during the Egyptian New Kingdom, but was adopted quite quickly by the indigenous people, and in ancient Kush, Isis was hugely popular. She appears
I wonder if she's worshipped in combination with Osiris, as it was in Egypt.
in multiple temples. In fact, it's the Kushites who end up worshipping Isis long into the Christian period.
Isis was one of the most important goddesses of Egyptian religion.
Yep.
She is often associated with motherhood, healing, fertility, magic, and the afterlife.
Yeah, she's got the wings, absolutely.
This object depicts Isis in human form as a beautiful woman. It was discovered in a temple at a site called Kawa in the northern Dongola Reach in Sudan. A royal hieroglyphic inscription on the object's front, known as a cartouche, mentions the Kushite king Anarkamani, who ruled in the early 3rd century BC. He was known as Beloved of Isis.
Beloved of Isis, wow.
Do we think that this was...
Do you think there was something in the eyes? Because look at these cavities here. And of course, when I first saw it, and I thought it was like at the size of an actual human head, I thought maybe it can be worn. But this obviously is not the case. Did she lose the eyes, or do you think they would put some gems? What's your guess?
the head of a statuette of Isis within this temple? I mean, what was its function?
No, instead, it's likely that this was the front of a ritual boat that was used to transport the statue of a god between temple spaces that will have been carried by priests from one temple to another across.
I love the shape of the eyes. Look how elongated and elegant. In fact, they have a certain tone of femininity to them. Very skilled craftsmanship.
Sudan.
Carried across Sudan. So was that boat not actually in the water? Was it being carried by people
Yes,
above?
so
Hey, Greg, glory to Rome, my friend. Glory to Rome.
it's better to think of it as more like a bark.
That's like in ancient Egypt where you have the carrying of the sacred bark
Absolutely.
between temples.
It's a ritual space. So the
Yeah.
deity in the boat cannot leave a sacred space. It would go from temple to sacred bark to temple. You can obviously see the size of the bark as well based on she's quite small. There was probably one of these on the front and one of them on the back. Here are the attachments where she would have been tied to the prow of the boat. She was also a lot more elaborate originally. So you can see there is a hole on the top. This was where a vulture headdress probably went.
Right.
Possibly in gold and wood. This may well have been removed every time she was brought back to the temple.
Makes sense.
She also would have had inlaid eyes, again, probably with a precious stone.
I was correct. Inlaid eyes with a precious stone, and clearly you would have another precious stone here. What stone do you think? Well, if this was painted, then perhaps the selection of the gem would have had to do with, color matching, as well as perhaps like properties connected to religion and ritualism. What are we guessing? Emeralds? What are we guessing? You think ceramic, but no, I think it is. Now she of course said it, but I did think it was going to be a gem. Maybe something blue. Lapis lazuli?
One of the most striking things of the statue today, that those inlaid eyes are no longer there and it looks like it's just staring through into your soul.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's so common because they're made of much more precious materials. It's actually very unusual that this has survived as well as it has because it's made of bronze and often...
Finally, she told us what it's made of. I would have started with that. You think sapphire? Who knows? Maybe. Hey, Greg, thank you so much for gifting the 5 memberships. I very much appreciate that. Warlord Stefox, Arin, I am Speedy, and Darius got a subscription. That's nice. Very kind of you. Thank you for the support. So it's made of bronze. Do you think it would have been painted then? Because the Romans usually don't paint. Sometimes they plaster them, but other times they choose not to paint bronze, depending, because they instead select specific constituents within the bronze alloy in order to have different results of different chromatic results, so that they can have like the hair having one color, because maybe you get more of a brownish tin bronze with some maybe orange tint, And then perhaps for the face, you'll have something more golden, like a dull gold, because it depends on the percentages of tin versus copper ratio. But other times, you know, they could cover them. When it comes to marble, then they would be fully painted. When it comes to this, though, was it painted or was it polished? And if it was polished, what I would imagine, since once again bronze has different colors depending on what you put in it, maybe this would have been the dull golden type, because that's the most common one in classical antiquity, at least, which is actually something I really appreciated when they made the game Assassin's Creed Origins. Origins is the one that's set in Egypt, right? And I remember very early on the game that you could see these like scale suits of armor, and which were made with bronze scales, and then you see the bronze of the spearhead, and it was all gold, this dull gold, which is usually how I think bronze most likely would have looked in period, at least when it comes to vases, weapons and armor. Given statue bronze is always different when it comes to the percentages, so that could look different. Who knows?
And that was melted down in later periods to be reused for something else.
Objects like this added to the magnificence of the whole procession. The face of the goddess Isis at the tips of this elaborate ship of the gods that was transported from temple to temple, gleaming in the sunlight.
Yeah, gleaming, exactly. So this was polished. If it's gleaming, it's polished. Who could you imagine that? That would have been incredible. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well, Greg. I was thinking maybe it's lapis lazuli, because yeah, there are precedent when it comes to that. So could you imagine that if it's like a dull golden glittering in the sun with blue eyes, and you have this contrast, because you know the contrasting colors when it comes to paint, orange and blue are the opposites, but I believe when it comes to light it's slightly shifted, and the opposite of blue becomes yellow, if I'm not wrong. Not a specialist, but that's what I remember reading. That would have been magnificent. Yeah, exactly, Greg.
It will have been a really awe-inspiring sight. And temples were restricted spaces. You've not got people going into temples to pray, like a modern church.
Yep.
So this is one of the only times ordinary people would have seen a deity.
I mean, look at some of the other details as well. I can see a bit of a necklace. Then you have also this big collar as well.
Before we jump into the collar, which just kind of reminds me aristocrats and nobility in Egypt and pharaohs. But another thing that because of course there's a connection between the upper echelon society and their legitimacy to rule, which is the fact that they are gods. That's how they are presented to the population, the pharaohs. The one thing that I wanted to say as well when it comes to the idea of maybe this was one of those types of bronze that looks kind of golden. Well, that's excellent as well. It could very well be, because oftentimes the skin of the gods in Egyptian religion is described as being gold. So maybe a brass even could work for this.
Oh, with a falcon on each side.
Yes, these are representing Horus, who you'll be familiar with from the Egyptian pantheon.
Right.
Yep.
This is a sign of wealth. This represents a gold and jeweled collar that people would have worn. You can see the remains of her feather headdress.
Those were very colorful. If they represented the collar as they usually were, then they would be multicolored with blues and reds and yellows.
And we think this is Isis.
Look at that.
There is a hole at the back where the headdress would have been tied in and
Right.
secured. There's also one at the front. And then the rest of this is her ritual wig. It's unlikely that
I
people-
see. So the hole in the front is not for another gem. It's to secure. Well, we don't know if they added some decorative elements to it, but it was mostly functional rather than decorative because it was used to secure the headdress. Fantastic. But I'm getting really into this, and I'm watching more that I want to. So let's just finish. Let's do another minute and a half, and then I'll call it a night for this react.
had hair like this, so she's wearing a very formal wig.
Beautiful.
To have this bronze representation of Isis survive almost 2,000 years and in such good condition is extremely rare.
when she was discovered in the temple at Kawa, it was very, very exciting. We are obviously missing a lot of precious materials from archaeological sites because they have been reused and recycled by ancient peoples. So the fact that we
sometimes stolen.
You now have a glimpse into her face, I think, is quite remarkable.
Yeah.
It's also a really nice
I like the facial expression. It really conveys it's outer-worldly, but at the same time, it has a layer of confidence. A bit of a grin, if you really look at it. But very serious. It's like it's both. It's serious, but it has a grin to it. It's like fantastic. Absolutely. Anyways, I think I watched enough. Also because I want to add more to it when it comes to the section on Amanirenas. Give him a like. This was very, very nice. I disagree with her when it comes to the Romans and their contact with the Kushites. This idea that the Kushites would have, oh no, they were winning, so the Romans got scared. It's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. But I mean, she wasn't introduced as an ancient Roman specialist, was she? And then again, the ancient Roman specialist they usually call, which is Dr. Simon Elliott, is a complete... I'm not going to use the term that I had in mind right now because I've got class. Anyways, yeah, that was fantastic. That was very, very good. The British Museum is definitely a place worth visiting, as usual. But that was very nice. There was a little react. Why not? But it is 2 a.m., so I think it's time, almost time to go to sleep. And maybe we can do a little more. Let me see. Let me put myself full screen again. And yeah, we'll do a few more reacts. I already got into this one. But I see we got some new stuff over at Wired. That could be interesting to check out one of these days. Absolutely. And we've got this video. I need to save a video that I'm going to react to tomorrow for the second channel. So just give me 1 second. I'm just going to write it here. Second channel react. Boom. Yeah, that's good. Very nice. But yeah, how are you guys doing tonight? I'm sorry you're a little late, Greg, but... I'm going to keep going live a lot in the next few days, and I've got stuff to open as well. Kind of want to do a live stream where I open these Mario Kart figures, something we'll be doing soon. And you know what I've been doing since I've been playing Mirror's Edge? I've decided to upload each level that I do on Metatron's Protectorate. And tonight, you didn't really miss a lot because, I mean, I did do quite a few levels and I finally did Pirandello Kruger level, which is my favorite. But then again, I died in the same spot something like 45 times. And I'm so going to do a bloopers montage. And I'll upload it on Protectorate. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. If I put the right music in it, it's going to be fantastic. But yeah, tomorrow we're going to do the unboxing for the Mario Kart pieces. And yeah, so that's the plan. That's the plan. I just now noticed Mario and Yoshi. Oh, here? Yeah, and check this out. Let me show you. Let me show you something special about this. Look at this. You ready? How about that? Yeah, we can animate him. And if I remember how you do this, you can even do this. My wife built it, by the way. It's Lego. She's great with Lego. She just bought it for me, but she built it for me because I don't really have the... I want to say the time, but then again, I don't know. I think she's just good at it. I don't know if I could do it as quickly as she does. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like follow the instructions, but... it's one of those things. Let me see what games we've got here. I want to have a look at what games we can plan some games for the next few days. Silent Hill, Solium Infernum. I do want to play Soma. Maybe after we finish Mirror's Edge. We're not too far away from the end, I don't think. So there's that one. Warhammer 40k Gladius is another one I love, but that one we need like a full stream because games can be a little long. It's not a game you can just pop in and play quickly. Mirror's Edge, just played it. Hexa Key, Hellish Quad, it's always nice to play. We'll play more Half Sword, but YouTube demonetizes it, which is really annoying. Yeah, he's moving. Yeah, it's really cool. Some raging. Oh, a lot of raging, my friend. A lot of raging. Yeah, Benny Hill would be nice, but I don't know if you get copy claimed. You probably do get copy claimed with that one. Where is Apple and you show it? Yeah. Good morning, Pedone Rosso. Or you're in or any other time of the day from Italy. Well, I'm in America. So, oh, but you're also Italian. With 15 years of study and improvement more advanced than me in English learning. How and when do I use pronounce versus pronunciation? Well, pronounce is the verb to pronounce, pronunciare, and pronunciation is the noun. So it's the concept, it's the thing that you're talking about. So that's the difference, yes. Yeah, it's a claim. I thought so, Greg. It's a shame because it'd be fun to use that, but... So yeah, pronunciation in Italian would be pronuncia, la pronuncia, whereas pronounce is pronunciare, to pronounce. Hey, Tipo the Green. FNT got a copyright claim due to this song, and they played like 5 seconds of it. Yeah, it's really annoying with songs like that, but I'll find something funny. I'll find something funny. It's possible that people use it wrong, but I don't think native speakers... Would a native speaker say, oh, his pronounce is weird, or his pronounce is on point? Never heard it. I've always heard his pronunciation is on point. And by the way, the pronunciation of the word pronunciation is actually quite difficult if you think about it, because if I really have to spell it out, it would be pronunciation. Pronunciation. I always hear people say pronunciation. It's actually pronunciation if you really want to say it, at least the way I say it. It's one of the possible ways, I guess. Yeah, you're very welcome, Pedone. No worries. Any question, feel free to ask. Yeah, once you enunciate it and say it, I exaggerated it a little bit, of course. But it did sound a little, yeah. Hi, Daxfile, didn't see you there. How you doing? I'm just looking at the games again. Defender of the Crown. So now Dune Spice Wars is a great one as well. Very fun. Hexarchy has some potential. Of course, Heroes of Mathematics. Populous, that's another one I gotta play. Man, Populous. Wow. Populous is another game I absolutely need to play one of these nights. Man, I wish days were like 35 hours long. Seriously. Just woke up, brother, and drinking coffee. Sounds good. Do you put milk in your coffee? I don't put sugar, but I always put milk. Wrong floor. That's a good one too. They are here. Complex. Still look, man, I have so many games. I have a lot of games. Humankind has been a good one. Although, I still prefer Civilization, like by a long shot. I saw the video your wife made about the new house tour and was laughing so much seeing 3 coffee machines in your kitchen. Yeah, we do. We do have, we have had more. She sold a few. At one point we had 5 coffee machines. And it's mostly her, by the way. Because I know people are going to point the finger, but like, it's the Italian guy. No, it's mostly her. I use one. She uses all the others. Occasionally I use the Nespresso as well, occasionally when I'm in the mood, but usually, yeah. Coagulation Station, I really want to play that game one of these nights. Enshrouded, good game too. I do want to play all of the Fears to Fathom. Up to this point I only played one with you, but I broke it. I had to skip an entire section because of it. Yeah, you thought it was me. Yeah, no, everyone thinks it's me. Every time the coffee machines appear, oh, that's the Italian. I'm like, well, actually, I would have been okay with one, but she's really into it. She loves taking her time, you know, in the morning, making her special coffees that she sees on TikTok, I guess. For me, I'm just coffee, little milk, drink, end of it. I don't need to put all the different stuff. She's got like these massive bottles of... She's American. It is what it is. Sometimes I try it. She's like, oh, come on, try it. And I try it. But it's so sweet. Not to mention, I feel like Americans are literally trying to hide the flavor of coffee. I enjoy the flavor of coffee. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Actually, I want to maintain it. It's a cultural thing. It's what you're used to, I suppose. A good Silent Hill. It's another one. I keep looking there because I'm staring at my list of games. That's why I'm looking in this direction. Let me see Steam. Maybe a good RTS, one of these nice. Isn't Steam having a RTS sale or something? What have they got? Definitely, we should check that one out. Yeah, anyways, it's 2:10. I really need to go to sleep. She's gonna call me again. In a little bit, she'll wake up. She'll call me, and she'll be like, are you alive? Are you okay? 100%. Greg, English my mother tongue with French, and I still have a bad grammar. Yeah, well, I mean, it is what it is, in both. I understand that. Stellaris is a 75% discount. Oh, Stellaris is... Maybe I own it already, though. Do I own Stellaris? Let me see. Isn't it like the super complicated one that you need to have, like, 3 degrees in astrophysics to play? And a degree in political science? I think that's Stellaris, right? Once I tried to watch a video that explained to you how to play, and it was 4.5 hours long. Yeah, that's the one. One day. It's worth it with all DLCs. I'll consider it. Because I remember trying to get into it, but it was too complicated. But then again, I didn't have a motivator. Now I do. I could do it on a Twitch stream. We can just learn it together and figure it out. So, yeah, probably. I remember it had some really neat political things that you needed to figure out. Oh, the policies and this and that. It looked interesting. So, absolutely something I'll look into. Yeah, no, if it's worth it, I'm okay with games that require time, like really steep learning curve, but then it kind of grows the level of enjoyment of the game. They even included Roman name scheme for leaders, planets and ships. Nice. We always appreciate that, Gaudio. But yeah, no, sorry to kind of end it abruptly, but I gotta go to sleep. So tomorrow I'm going to edit that video out, the react, and we're going to post it. The day after, I was looking into making a video dedicated to injuries in a Napoleonic battlefield, specifically focusing on cannons. Wanted to make that. Because you know what? It's Greg, you inspired me with the... because you mentioned the cuirass that got the hole from the cannonball, supposedly, at the Battle of Waterloo, if it's correct. And then kind of got into a little bit of a deep dive tonight, a rabbit hole, and I found some interesting stuff. So I'll make a dedicated video to that in the next couple of days. And then I wanted to make a video on Roman salute and then talk about that, possibly in connection with how historical fascists tried to connect themselves to the Romans, even though it's very likely that the salute actually never existed in ancient Rome. So yeah, these are the kind of the next 3 videos. Not sure the order because it depends on how quickly I can write the scripts, but that's what I'm working on. Okay, so thank you very much. I will see you next time, number ones. You too. Good night, Greg. Good night, Pedone Rosso. Passo chiudo. That's a good one. I haven't heard that one in a while. Passo chiudo. And good night, everyone. Daxfile and all the others. Aris. Anonymous. It was really good to have you here, guys. And I will see you tomorrow. Good night. Ciao, ciao. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.